Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Weston Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field to review, Wes, a 24-19 victory over the Los Angeles Rams at SoFi Stadium on Sunday. It was not pretty by any means, but there are no style points in the NFL.
Nope.
You get the victory, you move on, and the Packers are 3-2, bottom line. Plenty to work on. Lots of good things to take out of this game, certainly when you post a victory on the road. I think this one starts, quite frankly, though, with the defense coming up with the stop against a future Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yep.
With the game on the line, the Packers defense got the stop it needed in the final 2 minutes to win this one.
In the players with which they got the stop with, right? That was the other part of this that stood out to me, and it was one of my last tweets of the game as we were getting ready to head down to the locker room. A lot of things went into that final drive. A lot of players stepped up, but the fact that it was Edgerrin Cooper applying the quarterback hit and the fact that it was Evan Williams in coverage against Colby Parkinson. Now, keep in mind, he didn't get the PBU or whatever you call it statistically, but his coverage on him made that a very difficult catch, and he's going up against a tight end in a slant route there. But as Evan talked about afterwards, that was probably a case of the Rams going one too many times to the water well there. Yep. And being able to sort of telegraph it a little bit.
That's what I was going to say, because for those who like my What You Might Have Missed piece with the film clips that I post on Tuesday, I went through the entire film looking at Evan Williams, the rookie safeties game. He had only played maybe 36 snaps on defense through the first month of the regular season. He played every snap on defense, yep. All 78 in this game. And in reviewing his game, when you get down to the end, it's fascinating, Wes, and you said it. The Rams kind of went to the well one too many times because
the water well.
But they actually did it in the beginning of the game and in the end of the game, at the end of the game, because when the defense got the goal line stop on the 4th and goal early in the game, the 3rd and 4th down plays were not exactly the same, but pretty darn close. They were almost identical, and there was a lot of communication going on between McKinney and Williams to get the coverage straightened out, and the Packers end up getting the stop. Well, then at the end of the game on the final drive, and I break this down in the video clips, and it's really fascinating to stop the video and look at how things are played. On the previous series of downs, before the last one where the Packers get the 4th down stop, same drive, but previous series of downs, it's 3rd and 10, and the Rams run that bunch concept, the route concept with the bunch to the left, and Parkinson, the tight end, basically just runs a quick little curl, and he makes the catch, and Williams tackles him for a 9-yard gain. It sets up 4th and 1. They convert the 4th and 1 and get the next set of downs. Yep. And then on the 4th and 5, on that next set of downs, they ran the exact same thing. And when you look at how Williams plays those two plays, the first one, at the snap of the ball, he's about 11 yards off of Parkinson. And at the time that Parkinson sticks his foot in the ground to make the curl, Williams is about 5 yards off, and he kind of right before that kind of gets rubbed off a little bit by one of the other routes. When it comes at him again on 4th and 5, he makes the adjustments. He sees what's coming. He knows what's coming. At the snap of the ball, his gap is closed to about 8 yards instead of 11. At the time of the curl, he's avoided the other rub route much better, and he's only 3 yards off of Parkinson at the time of the curl, so he's right on him. It makes it a much tougher throw for Stafford, and you mentioned Cooper with the pressure up the middle, and yeah, the first time the Rams ran it, they got 9 yards. If they get 9 yards on the 4th and 5, of course, that drive continues, and who knows what happens. Williams made the adjustments. Incredible work for a rookie, really playing his first full game in the National Football League to make those adjustments and make the play in that coverage to get the stop and seal the game. Is tremendous work.
It is incredible to watch, and Matt LaFleur discussed it again on Monday. I mean, just how deep Green Bay is at the safety position. It allowed them to almost dial up a new nickel package, which consisted of Evan Williams playing on the back end, Javon Bullard still playing in the slot of the nickel, and Keyshawn Nixon, for the first time in a full game basis, playing outside on perimeter. He'd been in there time here and there, Packers used him outside in the base this season, a couple injury things the past few years. But no, this time he's out on an island, and they rotated Eric Stokes and Carrington Valentine at the other post. A very innovative type scheme that Green Bay had, and they had to work through some things. There were 2 big, long touchdown drives that the Rams put together that sort of got them started and also had them kind of in control of the game at one point. But Green Bay, every time they needed a response, offensively, defensively, even special teams, they rose to that occasion. So to get back to the initial thing that you came in with about how, there's still mistakes, there's things they got to clean up. The encouraging thing to me about this year is they're winning these games. Last year, they had to go through these early crucibles. They had to go and take their lumps early, and they had losses like they had in Pittsburgh. They had losses like they had in Atlanta.
In Vegas.
In Vegas.
In Denver.
In Denver, yeah. Where it's like...
Exactly.
They had stretches, and they showed some flashes, but then something would happen, adversity would hit, and they'd fall on the other side of it. They're 3-2. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I felt like this game in particular, especially having to go cross-country to L.A. and then really having a gut check like they did at the end of the first half, it shows this maturity of this team and also the value of having a guy like Jordan Love back out on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And staying on the defensive side of things, I mean, what more can you say about Xavier McKinney?
Nothing.
At this point? He has a hand in both of the turnovers in the third quarter, recovers the fumble that's forced by Kingsley Enagbari on a great tackle punch-out move by Enagbari, by the way. McKinney gets that fumble recovery. Then he gets his 5th interception in 5 games as a member of the Packers on an overthrow. And as he's done on multiple interceptions that he's had this season, he just he reads the play, reads the quarterback, gets over there and puts himself in position to make the play. Almost got another interception later in the game, almost got number 6.
And that's what he wanted to talk about after the game, too.
Oh, yeah.
Not the 5 in a row.
Right.
It's the fact that I should have 6 right.
Should have 6. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's just remarkable.
But the other key, of course, to that third quarter is the Packers offense, which had struggled throughout a good chunk of the first half. I mean, quite frankly, until the final drive of the first half, which was an important drive to get a field goal right before intermission, the offense had hit the big 53-yard pass to Jaden Reed to set up an early touchdown, but other than that, had not really done anything. There were 3 3-and-outs in there in the first half. There was the pick 6 by Love when he's falling down in the back of the end zone and mistakenly tries to get rid of the ball to save the safety, and instead of the safety, it ends up being 6 points for the Rams. So the offense had really been scuffling, but off of both of the turnovers in the third quarter, the Packers end up scoring touchdowns. You get the long catch and run by Tucker Kraft, and then Kraft finishes off the longer, a little bit more methodical drive. There was a really nice 20-yard screen pass in there to Josh Jacobs that got the Packers, really knocking on the door in a scoring range. But Kraft finishes off that drive for another touchdown. The second-year tight end getting his first 2-touchdown game, career high 88 yards receiving, and I'm telling you, Wes, that young man, number 85, is turning into not just a major piece to this offense, but a major weapon in this offense, and we're seeing this evolution that the more you put on Tucker Kraft's plate, the more he proves he can handle.
We all knew Xavier McKinney was going to be pretty special. You just see what he's doing in the Giants, the fact he was 24 years old. Josh Jacobs was an all-pro. Jaden Reed was the Packers' leading receiver last year.
Right.
The contributions they've gotten from Tucker Kraft in the first 5 games of the season, I think constitutes, at this point, breakout player status. A guy that I think when you look at the maturation of a player and the idea of draft and development, he encapsulates that. This is a guy that didn't really get his big opportunity until after Luke Musgrave's unfortunate injury last season, and he responded. He responded when it's time to block. He responds when it's time to get the first down. And then as you saw in that 66-yard pass, when he gets the ball in the open field, his mantra is, I'm not going to let any defensive back tackle me, especially the first one.
Yeah.
And he is not going to be denied. And I thought it was a good question, and it was a good answer from Matt LaFleur on Monday discussing Kraft in the idea of, hey, he's taking some damage with the shoulder. He's wearing the red jersey during practice this week, so the non-contact jersey.
Right.
Can he play this way? And as Matt LaFleur said, he's like, yeah, I think he can. Because if you're smart about it and you're pragmatic about how you use your body and at what points you sort of lay it on the line, it's going to allow you to have a long, sustainable career. It's just being able to know that boundary. And I think Kraft knows it well. And the fact that this guy, as a third-round pick, from South Dakota State, and we all heard the stories of him coming out about how he could have taken more money, NIL deals, he could have transferred, he could have become a more high-profile player. This guy's a budding star, man. The way he speaks, the way he acts, the way he plays. And the other thing Matt LaFleur said as well, to that point about the way he uses his physicality, it's reminds him in some ways of a George Kittle type tight end where, hey, he's going to get nicked up a couple times, but he's going to make a lot of plays for you too. This is the most dynamic, all-around tight end that I can remember covering so far with the Green Bay Packers, and he's in the infancy of this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, he can do everything you need a tight end to do, and he's doing it at 23 years old.
And what I like best about this performance in particular was that for as important as Tucker Kraft has been to this offense all season long, and we've seen him make big-time plays time after time, last week against Minnesota, he had a holding penalty, and he had a fumble. Probably the two biggest mistakes we've seen him make in a long time. And he goes out there the following week, and it's the previous week the mistakes were done and over with, and he got back to being the guy that he's been, right? And for a young player, that's not easy, but that's how you prove that you're a pro, right? Because bad stuff is going to happen. Nobody's perfect. And some mistakes are more noticeable than others. When that yellow flag comes out, when that ball hits the ground, those are very noticeable mistakes. Other guys make mistakes too that aren't as noticeable. Those are the ones that jump out. Everybody starts talking about them. And Tucker Kraft just, I asked him actually about it last week. I haven't been involved in too many scrums at his locker, but I was at the one last week, and I asked him, okay, you've made a bunch of big plays. You came out of the Vikings game with a couple of regrets. Like, how, what's the line between learning from your mistakes but not dwelling on them so they affect you the next time?
Right.
And he basically just said, you can't turn back the clock. It's all about you learn from your mistakes and you move forward. And it's really that simple. And that's so that you're not dwelling on them. You process the mistakes, but you move forward. And I thought he did that over the course of these last 2 weeks. Pretty impressive. And quite frankly, the Packers needed him. They were down Christian Watson, also missing Romeo Doubs, who was suspended for this game for conduct detrimental to the team when he missed practice, skipped out on practice last week, Thursday and Friday. Signs are pointing to Romeo Doubs being back at practice on Wednesday. That's what we heard from Matt LaFleur, so we'll see how that situation evolves this week. But Packers needed Tucker Kraft and Jaden Reed to do their thing offensively in this game with Watson and Doubs out, and those guys delivered.
I felt like there's a lot of things that played in the outcome of this game. Some very peculiar statistics. The fact that Green Bay got, I think, into the third quarter without having a third down conversion at that point. Certainly the takeaways, the streak that Xavier McKinney is on right now is just unparalleled. But I felt overall, as I was leaving that stadium, the difference in that game was which team overcame their setbacks better.
Mm-hmm.
Packers probably a little bit deeper in terms of their skill positions than what the Rams are, without Puka Nacua, without Cooper Kupp. But I mean, the fact is that you saw a player like Kraft step up. You saw the second effort yardage that a guy like Josh Jacobs provided in this, including getting that touchdown at the end of the second drive, in the first quarter. The Packers just sort of responded, I felt like, the appropriate way they needed to respond. And the other thing I will do, commending Matt LaFleur on this, Packers had a lot of adversity at the end of last season. They're in the middle of this run. They're trying to make the playoffs. The Jair Alexander situation happens in Carolina, and they shut him down for a very, very critical game against the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, the season was on the line. I mean, New Year's Eve, Week 17, second to last game of the season, the Packers got to have it, and they didn't have Alexander for that ball game.
And in this game, Christian Watson was unlikely to play, had not practiced because of the ankle injury, and then you make the decision to suspend Romeo for the conduct detrimental to the team. And talking in the locker room with some of the players, I thought Dontavian Wicks had one of the best points out of anybody. He's like, we only had 4 guys up at receiver, but we know they believe in us and we believe in each other. And Jaden Reed said he had good conversations with Rome. He's excited for him to be back here this week as well. The Packers will proceed, and they will take that next step forward, just like they did last year without Jair, and in the aftermath of Jair, and how Jair performed then in that game against Dallas in the playoffs. But more importantly, it is about the idea of team. And I think these type of victories and how the Packers responded to that adversity once again, it shows you the culture that Matt LaFleur has built in that locker room, and also the way in which players, I think, have responded to each other, and understanding that when something comes up, expected, unexpected, injuries, setbacks, what have you, it's all about the next guy that could potentially make an impact for this football team, and there were several of them in this matchup.
Yeah, when you talk about the resiliency, you talk about bouncing back and recovering, it is absolutely the culture that Matt LaFleur has built in that locker room. It's also what's embodied in his quarterback,
right,
in Jordan Love, because we saw it. He made, I mean, considering the stakes, obviously the interception at the end of the San Francisco playoff game last year was the biggest mistake of his career. This one, I would say, was probably the ugliest, perhaps, mistake of his career, with not taking the safety. You know, he's in the back of the end zone. He's trying to go deep on 3rd and long. And, you know, as he sets his feet and then gets hit, ends up resulting in disaster, in just a gift of a pick 6 for the Rams. But then what does Jordan Love do? He comes back out. He drives the offense down the field to get a field goal before halftime. So the halftime score is 13-10 instead of 13-7. And then he comes out in the second half, and in taking advantage of the 2 takeaways, scores the 2 touchdowns, ultimately ends up putting together a streak of 9 consecutive completions after the pick 6, and essentially putting 17 points on the board after a pick 6 before he misses on another pass, before he throws another incompletion. You can't coach that kind of response. You can't teach the mentality, the fortitude, the mental fortitude it takes to respond that way to an absolutely disastrous play that happened in the game, which put the Packers behind a game that they felt they were kind of in control of, even though it was only 7-7 at the time. But the Packers were feeling okay about how things were going. And then suddenly that happens back by your own goal line, and you're losing the game. 17 straight points, 9 straight completions after that disastrous play. That is what is moving the Packers forward right now, is Jordan Love, as he's still figuring this out. He is not a finished product. He is going to make mistakes out there. Things are not going to be perfect. But what we know about Jordan Love is he's going to shake it off and just play the next play. And that's invaluable, not only for him at the quarterback position, but as an example to the team as a whole, in my opinion.
It's 100% right, Mike. And Matt LaFleur talked about it again after the game. I mean, that is Jordan's superpower. And the more I cover this league, there are so many intangibles you look for. You look for size, height, obviously hand size is something people talk about 40 times, what a guy's arm length is like in terms of just the passing. And then you look at the moxie side of it, and you can't time it. You can't put it on a stopwatch. You can't, throw it out there at the combine and measure it. But it's a big part of how you play football and of how you play quarterback. Mm-hmm. And Jordan has it. It's something that people have talked about dating back to his time at Utah State. There is this cold, cerebral side to him that is going to weather whatever storms come in his path.
Yeah.
And a couple things happened in that game. I got a kick out of a lot of the Monday morning quarterbacking of the 53-yard pass he had to Jaden Reed early in that game too. I've had 2 things that floated through my mind, because I saw Barstool put this up as like, oh, he might have some Brett Favre blood in him. It's like, yeah,
he
Jordan's
does.
always had that.
He does.
I was preparing people. If you go back and bring up all the podcasts and all the appearances, I'm sure I said on these shows too, going into the 2023 season, I kept telling people, just a reminder, there's a lot more Brett Favre to Jordan's game than there probably is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Now, I think Jordan has done a wonderful job of marrying those 2 things. I think Tom Clements has built into him, the importance of fundamentals and footwork and being on time with your throws. But at the same time, he has a cannon of an arm, and he is not afraid to use it. And when you look at that pass to Reed, yeah, it's triple coverage, and Reed makes an incredible play, but what about that? The worst thing that happens there is somebody picks it off at the 5-yard line, right? Like, that was kind of the thinking in my head with that. I'm like, if you want to pin him back at the 5 at that point, fine. But as Jaden Reed talked about afterwards too, he's like, F it, Reed's out there somewhere. That was the whole his mindset when he was at Michigan State, and it played out there. Jordan is going to put his receivers in an opportunity to make plays. And with whatever way you break it down, whether it's Favre, whether it's Rodgers, that's what the great quarterbacks do.
Yeah.
And I love the way that he started that thing. Now, as you said, with the 9 straight completions and the setback with the pick 6, it's about consistency and being able to kind of not have the feast or famine approach to this offense, be able to have some more consistency.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. There has been a feast or famine nature to this offense with in the 3 games that Jordan Love has played this year. I think we have to remember he's only played 3 games so far this year, and the last 2 games he has been dealing with a little bit of limitation with the knee and all of that kind of stuff. Here's what another quality that I really like about Jordan Love and what I see out there. And sometimes, yes, the gunslinger Brett Favre sort of element to him, it's going to need to be reined in a little bit at certain times. You can't just let that go. And so there's going to be some coaching involved there. You don't want to completely take it away, but yet it's about learning, maybe the right time to take those shots, etc. What I love about Jordan Love is that he trusts every single one of those receivers that's out there. Dontavian Wicks has had some rough moments, had some big moments. And Wicks has got to be able to shake some of this stuff off and start just letting his talent take over and let it shine through. But for whatever struggles Wicks is having, that doesn't stop Jordan Love from giving him the opportunity one-on-one on the double move to put the game away down the sideline, right? And Jordan put that ball in a pretty good spot. Unfortunately, Wicks wasn't able to come up with it. But the fact that, Wicks had dropped a ball earlier in the game, et cetera, and, that didn't matter. The game was on the line. Jordan Love sees Dontavian Wicks out to his right. He knows it's going to be one-on-one coverage. It's like, all right, kid, let's do this. Let's put this game away right here, right now. And it didn't work out, but those are the kinds of things that are gonna help a guy like Dontavian Wicks get through this, knowing that his quarterback has the trust in him, right? And for me, I mean, whether it's Malik Heath or Bo Melton, or when Romeo Doubs comes back, when Christian Watson comes back from the injury, it doesn't matter which guy is out there. Tucker Kraft at tight end, Luke Musgrave, Jordan Love trusts all these guys.
He does.
And I think in the long run, you're going to go through the ups and downs, but in the long run, that's going to serve this offense well. And these guys are going to hit their stride at some point. I am 100% sure of that. We've seen it. We saw it last year. It hasn't happened this year. It's okay. Their patience is involved. I understand some of the impatience. I get it. I think they're going to get there. And I think they're going to get there because of some of these qualities that we've seen, the internal qualities of the quarterback himself and his teammates. Is going to get them there.
And then being the youngest team in the NFL again going into the season, you feel like whatever you see in week 5 is going to be different than what you see in week 15. And there's going to be this maturation, there's going to be this progression, there's going to be this idea of, okay, we've done these certain concepts, we've built these concepts, and we're going to improve through this system when you have that type of stability. Same reason why I think there's a lot of reason for optimism and hope with the defense. Yeah, the pass rush hasn't been as consistent as you want. The run defense has lapsed at times, but the ability to take away the football is something that that's real. And being able to build the confidence with that. I mean, I threw out that stat. It's a little bit affected now, but at the end of game day on Sunday, I mean, Xavier McKinney is like tied for 5th or 6th right now in terms of interceptions for the entire league as far as teams are concerned.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And then you see him bringing along like Evan Williams, a guy like Evan Williams alongside him. You see Javon Bullard getting more reps and opportunities. You see Edgerrin Cooper, if he can put this hip injury behind him, potentially what he could add to this defense as well.
That sack he had, that Cooper had of Matt, I mean, that's that's one-on-one in the open field, and Stafford's trying to dodge him, and I mean he grabs him by the shoulder pad and just yanks him to the ground like nobody's business. I mean,
the freaking play started with him over the center.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a stunt. He loops all the way around. He has to run a long way to get that sack, and then and he absolutely whips Stafford to the ground for a big loss. Knocked the Rams out of field goal range.
Yeah, there aren't very many human beings that are going to be able to do it with that with that size, with that speed. And again, this is why you stick with it. You just try to corral as many of these wins as possible, and the Packers are going to need them. We'll talk about in a second with how the NFC North did this weekend. But
yeah,
this is the Packers are real, and I think there's a lot more, as dire as it sometimes felt last season, when you're just like, okay, when are they going to catch their stride here? I just feel like if they can just get some of these wins together, if they can just start building that momentum, the talent is up there, man. I'd put this roster right now, as far as the construct of it, up there, with any team in the National Football League.
Yeah, there's definitely some issues with regard to the drop passes, the penalties, the pass rush when not blitzing, those kinds of things. Those are the issues that are standing out that the Packers need to work on. But there's a heck of a lot of good stuff that's going on out there, and if they can get some of that other stuff, you're never going to eliminate all the mistakes, but if you can start to reduce them, you start to bring them down, make fewer of them every game, then this team is really going to find itself, I think. A little bit of sponsor business here, Wes. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousins Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousins Subs, 50-plus years of better. All right, looking around the NFL, 2 undefeated teams left, the Minnesota Vikings, Kansas City Chiefs, both 5-0. The Vikings get to 5-0 with a victory in London, which suddenly became the last straw for Robert Saleh as the head coach of the New York Jets shortly before we turned the cameras on here today. Saleh was fired by Jets owner Woody Johnson. As far as the NFC is concerned, only 2 other teams, aside from the Vikings, in the entire conference have fewer than 2 losses. Washington, a surprising 4-1 with rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels doing his thing, and Detroit at 3-1. They had the early bye in Week 5, did not play this last week. 13 of 16 teams in the NFC West have 2 or more losses. Hang on, buckle up, whatever you want to say. This is going to be a long and bumpy ride all the way to December and into January. But the Packers are 3-2. They've chalked up a few wins. They've got plenty to work on, and it's going to take. Nobody's going to have anything all that secure before December in the NFC.
No, and it always does feel like this. There's 17 game weeks, and it feels like you just got to claim as many of these wins as possible. Stack them in your pile and keep pushing forward. You mentioned all the teams at 2 wins, 2 losses. And I look at the Kansas City Chiefs, I look at the Minnesota Vikings, and you respect them both for being 5-0, but neither of these teams is, the 2007 New England Patriots. Like,
yeah. Their games are hard fought. All of these are, and you tip your cap to the teams that find a way to win on a consistent basis and put up a record like 5-0 by early October, because it's not easy to do.
And you look at how close it could be for Kansas City. Now, I'm guessing they'd probably still be 4-1 if they lose that one to Baltimore in the opener, but Minnesota's been in some knockdown, drag-out fights, and the Jets did not go away in that game.
Nope.
The offense struggled for Minnesota again in the second half to find some, when they needed the series, they got it, but for the most part, they really struggled to move the ball without Aaron Jones on the field.
Yeah, and the Vikings needed a defensive touchdown early on. Andrew Van Ginkel gets a pick 6. They end up beating the Jets by 6 points. The early pick 6 was the difference in the ball game, as it turned out.
Yeah, and you look at Kansas City, they had their leading rusher is Kareem Hunt with 102 yards. His longest carry was 8 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster, who's been kind of bouncing around the league, has 130 yards. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is not doing this with the complementary parts that we talk about here in Green Bay right now. He's having to, now Travis Kelce erases some of that, but again, you have to work out with the pieces that you have. This week was such an interesting week, though. I mean, the Bears took care of business against the Panthers like they should. I mean, you look at how these games played out with just the complete dumpster fire right now that's happening in Cleveland and Washington taking it to them.
Yeah.
A good Browns defense being able to not be able to stop the Jalen Daniels train. I mean, over and over again, and certainly we'll be talking later this week about the Cardinals and them being able to turn back and have an answer for the 49ers. This league is so predicated on parity that when you see teams emerge, whether it's 4 wins, 5 wins, you have to respect it, while also acknowledging that it's like the Green Bay Packers are not that far away from it for all their flaws and all their warts in the early part of the season.
Yeah. And I know people get tired of me, saying things like it's a week-to-week league and this league is bonkers and, crazy stuff happens. Here's the thing, Wes. I mean, week 5 in the NFL, there were 3 blocked field goals. 2 of them returned for touchdowns in the same week in the NFL, right? And hats off, Colby Wooden for the Green Bay Packers gets activated, blocks an extra point.
Yep.
In the game against the Rams. We didn't even talk about that, but that certainly had a factor on the scoreboard as things went. And then the Rams went for 2 later on. They didn't get it, so it was a 5-point game instead of possibly a 3-point game with just 2 normal extra points, all that kind of stuff. But my point is, it's an example of the crazy stuff that happens. I mean, 1 second, Seattle is lining up for a field goal with a minute to go to tie the New York Giants at home. And the next thing they know, that ball is blocked and the guy's running the other way, and the New York Giants come out of Seattle, of all places, with a victory. And so as I said, there's some impatience with the Packers. There's some frustrations at how things look at times, et cetera, et cetera. You just have to keep plowing through. You do your best to try to chalk up as many wins as you can. And as Matt LaFleur likes to say, all you can do is keep putting in the work week after week. You put in the work to get the team to where it needs to be, because this is a long, long road.
And there's one division right now where everybody's above 500. And it's just, that's the way it's going to go. And I said it in Insider Inbox on Tuesday. Packers cannot do anything about the division right now. They got 3 more games before they worry about a division opponent again. You have to pick up as many of these W's as you can, because they're going to be hard to come by within the NFC North. The Bears' defense, the way they're taking the ball away, the way Minnesota is taking away the football, I mean, these are some difficult opponents that you're going to be facing within your division. For as much, as people have wanted to rip on the North in the past, I've always said it, that the amount of teams, yes, Green Bay was the staple, but the amount of times the Lions, Bears, and Vikings all found their ways into the playoffs over the last 12 years. It's noteworthy. And right now, all 3 of these teams, with Green Bay being here, all 4 of these teams, they have something to believe in right now, and I think that makes this division very dangerous.
Yeah, and the somewhat big picture look for the Packers right now is you have 4 games before the bye week, and 3 of those 4 are at Lambeau Field. This is an important stretch for Green Bay, because you don't get stretches like this very often. 3 out of 4 at Lambeau Field before you get to that midseason bye, and it'll start this week against the Cardinals, a team that we will talk about on our next show. But for now, we're going to call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team, continuing with everything going on here at 1265. We'll have it for you on Packers.com. For Wes, I'm Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.